Good afternoon. It is Monday, September 6th, 2010. Happy Labor Day. I know it's been a while since I last made a video blog. In the last few weeks, last month, I've been settling into my new apartment. I began my final year of classes at George Mason University last week. And so those things have been taking up my time and things. But I hope to get back in the routine of making these blogs. So a lot has happened in the last month. The economy is still stagnating, and actually precious metals have done really well this month. But overall, the economy is still stagnant. But probably the number one bit of news in these last few weeks has been the war in Iraq. Now, Barack Obama has announced that the war in Iraq is essentially over, that combat operations are done, and I'm not the first person to say this, of course. You've heard this before, I'm sure, but in many ways, critics have compared this to George W. Bush's Mission Accomplished speech in 2003. This is not the end of the war in Iraq, and it doesn't shock me. It doesn't surprise me. It still disappoints me, though, that the formerly anti-war media on the left has accepted this Orwellian message of Obama that the war is over without any criticism. The war is absolutely not over. We're still going to have tens of thousands of troops in Iraq. They're still armed. We're hiring, the Obama administration will be hiring additional mercenaries or private troops to conduct operations in Iraq. We have the officials in the military have said that we're still not going to leave way after the end of 2011. So this has been a completely false claim made by the Obama administration, which gets more and more Orwellian the deeper and deeper we get into his administration. But this should not be surprising to anyone, because Obama is a progressive. And if you watch, some of you might watch Glenn Beck. He talks a lot about the progressive movement on his show, which I laud him for. I think it's been a lot good that he's gone over the history of the progressive movement. But this should not be surprising, because militarism and war making is absolutely essential, was absolutely essential in the progressive movement in the early 20th century, which is when the progressive movement first really formed and so forth. Woodrow Wilson, the quintessential progressive president, took us into World War I against the American people's will. Basically, he was elected to stay out of the war. That was what he was elected on, and he campaigned on that. But he took us into war anyway, and it was a lot of Americans died. Locked up anti-war protesters, including Eugene Debs and other guys. But he's not the only progressive who supported war. Teddy Roosevelt was a big militaristic guy. And World War I had the broad support of the progressive movement. See, progressives, yes, they inaugurated the federal income tax, the Federal Reserve. They did all those things on the domestic front, but what people have forgotten is that the progressive movement was very militaristic too. They supported war. Why did they support war? Because war is the health of the state. You've probably heard that quotation before. War is the health of the state. And what that means is the military, whether or not you, if you support the military, that's fine. I mean, there is a role for the military in a small government constitutional society to defend a nation and defend the borders, and if there's a foreign invader, defend the American people from them. But militarism takes it a step further and says we have a responsibility to go around the world and boss people around, invade other countries who haven't invaded us first, and so forth. And the military is a bureaucracy. Whether you love it or not, it's still a bureaucracy. There's a lot of waste. There's a lot of money that goes into it. And in a militaristic type society, it's very easy to take away civil liberties and very easy to take away economic liberties. And so the progressive movement was very supportive of militarism and war making in the early 20th century. It's why we went to World War I. It's why FDR locked up hundreds of thousands of innocent Japanese American civilians who did nothing wrong. It's why Woodrow Wilson locked up anti-war protesters, including Eugene Debs. He arrested tens of thousands of people. I think it was 175,000 total people were arrested. He made people take loyalty oaths. I mean, so this is the forgotten history of the progressive movement. So it should not surprise anybody that Obama is the same way. And remember, George W. Bush was a progressive as well. What was Woodrow Wilson's rationale for World War I? His rationale was that he wanted to make the world safe for democracy. Well, isn't that what George W. Bush argued as well? And Obama is arguing as well. So this is all part of that same progressive movement. Who traditionally opposed the war in the Great War in World War I? It was the classical liberals and some of the more radical socialists who felt betrayed by the progressive movement. Remember, the progressive movement they weren't radical socialists; they just wanted centralized power. Some people call that fascism. And in fact, Mussolini had broad support among progressives. The progressives loved Mussolini in the 1920s. And actually, a lot of progressives really admired Adolf Hitler in the 1930s before the Holocaust happened. They liked Hitler. They admired him and his leadership and the way he centralized power in the hands of a few. But the classical liberals of the 19th century, those were the libertarians. See, liberalism used to mean libertarianism before it was perverted into what it is today. But the liberals, the classical liberals, the libertarians were the ones who opposed all these wars. And we've forgotten that. That's a piece of our history that we've completely neglected. So this needs to stop. All this war making, it has to stop, and Obama's not ending it. I guarantee you military expenditures will not go down. The fact that we're hiring all these private contractors, that's going to cost billions and billions and billions of dollars. So it just angers me how the left has fallen for this guy. I mean, they love Obama. And in hindsight, it would have been so much better for Hillary Clinton to win the nomination. Because we know the Republicans hated Hillary Clinton, so we still would have seen the Tea Parties. And I think the left would not have been as tolerant of Hillary Clinton's militarism as they are with Barack Obama. I think a lot of people on the left are still blinded by Obama's race, the fact that he's a black man. And don't get me wrong, that's awesome that we've reached a point where we can elect a black man, but I think it's blinded so many. Just because he's black doesn't mean, obviously, it doesn't matter what skin color you are, it's what your policies are. And at the end of the day, this is still an Orwellian, militaristic, fascist-like president. And that might sound extreme to a lot of you guys, but if you study the history of fascism and the history of progressivism, they go hand in hand. Militarism, centralized power. Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, Woodrow Wilson, they loved power and they hated decentralized power. They hated liberalism in the classical sense. They couldn't stand it. They couldn't stand individual rights. That's why Woodrow Wilson had no problem locking up people or making them sign loyalty oaths and things like that. So if you are a member of the left and you still support Obama, I mean, you really just open your eyes. This guy, because if George W. Bush pulled this stunt where he announced that the war in Iraq was over, even though we're still going to have all these troops there, and even though there'll still be private military contractors there, and even though most of the troops who are leaving will just go right into Afghanistan, the left wouldn't have put up with it. But Obama says it and they fall for it because Obama is our messianic leader who we're not allowed to question, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I kind of rant on this blog, but I'm going to try to keep up with this more often. I hope I didn't lose too many viewers in this last month, but anyway, hope everybody's doing okay, and take care, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.